Hey Booktube, this is Kelly. Thank you so much for watching my channel, Books I'm Not Reading. I am here today to redo an original tag. Please let me advise all of you, especially those of you who are new to Booktube, if you are uploading a video and you delete something, it is gone forever. Unless you have it still saved on your device, which of course, that's not my style. Most videos I would not remake, but this is an original tag. This is the My Reading Life in 10 Books tag. And I actually am not the creator of it. I asked my subscribers to tell me if they could make a tag, like what would they do, because I think a lot of you watching don't have your own channel. Maybe haven't even left a comment yet. But VictoriaM had this brilliant idea of the My Reading Life in 10 books. And her prompt is, tell us about the 10 books that most strongly formed you as a reader. From the first book you read on your own, perhaps, to today, and why they are significant. And I'm going to talk about my life as a reader starting from my senior year of high school. So I have done the Hindsight is 2020 reader tag, and I will link to that down below. Yeah, in doing this tag again, I kind of realized it's not actually so much the books as it is sort of the chapter in my life that they symbolize, and they definitely overlap for sure. And some of you, those of you who've been watching my channel for a long time, you will definitely be familiar with some of these books because I've talked about them a lot. My very first booktube video that I made, this is the only book I talked about, which is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. So I read this my senior year of high school, and I think it's significant in my life as a reader because it's the first time I read a classic on my own. And I'm not gonna lie, like it was hard for me to get used to the language of Jane Austen, and obviously I have overcome that, and I do think that the more you read of Jane Austen, like the easier it gets. So, but definitely this is a landmark moment in my life as a reader, to being brave enough to pick up those kind of books. The next one is a book I read in college. I actually read this in a women's studies class. This is Daughter of Earth by Agnes Smedley. Agnes Smedley lived from 1892 to 1950. And she was really revolutionary in her day in terms of her ideas about race, feminism, the poor of America. And so this really opened up my eyes as far as books with more of a not just a story, but a powerful message behind them. And yes, to give you some idea of how much I loved this book in college, it's been a really long time since I've read it, so I probably should read it again. But the very first book I bought my husband was this book. The first book he bought me was The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. And the next book again is another one that, man, we've talked about so much, but this is Tim O'Brien's novel about the Vietnam War called The Things They Carried. And I was introduced to this in college, the first chapter, as a short story. And somebody told me it was an entire novel, and I had to read it right away. I have read this book maybe 3 times, which is a lot for me. I love it. And this book was, I think really significant in terms of making me think about language and how to use language in different ways to express things. And yeah, it's absolutely one of my favorite books, so can't recommend that one high enough. Okay, so the next book, it surprised some of you, is Douglas Coupland's Microserfs. And again, this is more like a symbolic book than the book itself, although it is a funny book. It's about some Microsoft employees who are very disgruntled. And I don't know, Mark Nash might disagree with me, but it is a little bit more experimental, if you will, in the way that Coupland writes this. I don't know if you can see. This was the first book I read in the book club that Jason started, which is still going on. I'm just not a member of. But I was part of the book club for a long time. And the thing about the book club is that there's a schedule in Jason's particular book club that rotates through who gets to pick the next book. And so because of that, I was forced to really get outside of my comfort zone. I would have never picked up Douglas Coupland probably on my own. And I would recommend to Gen Xers everywhere to read his Generation X book. But yeah, so I mean, we read Portuguese, we read Italo Calvino. Am I saying that right? If on a Winter's Night. We read Dos Passos. I mean, just a lot of stuff. And I also got to share some of my favorite books, like Betty Smith's A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. So the book club was really important in terms of me as a reader growing and being willing to try new things. The next kind of chapter of my reading life that I want to tell you about is my, I guess, faith reading, if you will. I'd say like Christian nonfiction, but I know like to some of you that doesn't make a lot of sense. I have read a lot of what I would call Christian nonfiction, and I feel like it's a pretty big spectrum. I could be wrong. And some of it has been excellent and has stayed with me, like this book, The Return of the Prodigal Son by Henri Nouwen. And some of it I read more to try to understand the faith community that I was connected with at a particular time, those sorts of things. So, but this book is, one of my Catholic friends gave this to me. Henri Nouwen was a Jesuit priest. He taught at some big universities, including Harvard's divinity program. But then he was transferred to Toronto, and he worked at a home there for people with severe disabilities. So this is Henri Nouwen talking about the biblical story of the return of the prodigal son. Henri Nouwen's story of experiencing the return of the prodigal son, the different characters in the story, and seeing things from their perspective, as well as Rembrandt's painting, which is in the Hermitage, and I've seen it, can't believe it, and how Rembrandt, how his life was affected by this particular story. So anyway, it's a slim little thing, but man, is it deep and rich. And this is the kind of thing that I want to continue to read, these kinds of faith-related books, if you will. Okay. We don't normally talk about YA or middle grade books on this channel, but there was a time where I was a bookseller, and I was in charge of sales to schools and librarians, and I had a sales goal that I had to meet. And so I just remember early on staring at the YA section and the children's section and realizing like I had so much to learn about middle grade picture books and YA, which it really didn't exist when I was a teenager. So anyway, but this is Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli, and I love this book, which is why I still own it. If I had read this in middle grade or early high school, I think it would have affected me. So yeah, so there was a period in my life where, man, like every lunch break I was reading YA or yeah, little slim the Ramona books and Kate DiCamillo and things like that. So all right, while I was at Barnes & Noble, I found out that I had epilepsy, and which was a big change in my life. And for the first kind of 6 months after my diagnosis, I was really depressed. I was really stressed out. I decided I needed a distraction. And so I decided I was going to read all the books that have won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, or as it was initially called, the Pulitzer Prize for the novel. Now, I had already read some Pulitzer Prize books before I started this project, but this was the first book that I read specifically in an effort to do that. This is The Late George Apley by John Marquand. I bought this at a fantastic used bookstore in Missoula, Montana. And yeah, it has so much to do with Boston, and it's kind of a family generational story. I really feel like it does fit what once was more of an important criteria in the Pulitzer, in that it be kind of focused on Americana, but I really liked this, and I actually own another John Marquand book that's in much better condition than this one, and so I need to get to that book. But anyway, so yeah, so this was a little over 2 years of my life to read the majority of them, and then every year since I have read the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. So big chapter in my life as a reader, in terms of just it was like almost like an American literature class starting from about 1917, 1918 on. And when I was done with that, I was kind of exhausted. And Jason got me this beautiful bag and bought me a bunch of like fun books, I guess, if you will, or things that were not as difficult to read. And that includes the books, I think he bought me almost all of them, the books from the Betsy-Tacy series by Maud Hart Lovelace. And I have spent a lot of time, I think there's a whole playlist of Betsy-Tacy videos. I also read Emily of Deep Valley, Winona's Pony Cart, Carney's House Party. And they're just, these books are such a joy. I recommend them to everyone that will listen. But these books are just sheer pleasure. And yeah, so that was kind of like teaching myself again, like, okay, like, yes, you read all of these more serious books about life in America, but reading is supposed to be fun too, right? Most of the time. And so these were just, yeah, that was a great way to start kind of that journey. Since moving back to Wyoming, 1 year, Jason decided that we should read 3 giant Dickens books. He roped some other people into this because he's super persuasive. But so we read Bleak House, we read the Pickwick Papers, and we read Little Dorrit. And I did actually manage to read all 3 of them in 1 year. Jason was with me with Bleak House and the Pickwick Papers. Took him a little longer to finish Little Dorrit, but and this really helped me not be so intimidated by mammoths, I guess, if you will, big, huge tomes. And also, like, I kind of fell in love with Dickens. I mean, I know the Pickwick Papers is flawed, you guys, but I love that book. And this book, Bleak House, is just an absolute masterpiece. So I feel fortunate that Jason kind of got a bunch of us to do that. Kind of a turning point in not being afraid of large books and discovering an author that I thought I didn't like, and I really do. And the next chapter really is Booktube, because I struggled for a few years as a reader. What to read, what did I want to read? I went through quite a period where I didn't really want to read at all, hence the name of this channel. And then I joined Booktube and met you guys and watched your videos and saw your enthusiasm for reading and saw Jason's enthusiasm again for, not that he had been in a reading slump, but just his enthusiasm for telling all of you about the books that he loved. And so, yeah, so that's, I mean, it's been very big for me as a reader. It really has exposed me to just so many books and authors that I have been oblivious to. And it really got me thinking also about our own home library and the books that I've owned for a long time. Like this one, Plainsong, by Kent Haruf. So obviously I read this in 2018 when I started my channel, but I think I bought it in, let's see, 2005. I have since read the other two books in this kind of trilogy. They'll take place in the same small town in Colorado. So Eventide and Benediction are the other two books. They're all just absolutely outstanding. But this was just such a great reading experience, and this was the best book of 2018 for me, the year that I started my channel. So that's kind of my reading life in 10 books. Now, Victoria had a few requests of people that she would like to see do this tag, and I don't think any of these people, I did hear from Kazin the first time I recorded this, Kazin at Always Doing, so thank you, Kazin, for acknowledging that you've been tagged, and I understand that it might take you a while to get to it. Victoria would also really like to see Olive at A Book Olive do this tag, Rachel at Kalindi, and Andrea at Infinite Text. I also want to tag Steve Donahue. Steve, you made 8 videos yesterday. Surely you can do a tag. Brian from Bookish, Mark Nash, Kathy, the Grim Reader. I initially tagged Gina Stanier Books, and she's actually since done this tag, so I will link to her video down below so you can check that out. And I decided, since I was doing this video again, I might as well add Hannah at Hannah's Books and Courtney Ferreter and a channel I keep meaning to mention and keep forgetting, and I'm so sorry. Pete's Pensive. I hope I'm saying that right. Pete is a new booktuber, a small booktuber. He has like 38 subscribers, so definitely go and check out Pete's channel. All right, BookTube, remember to be kind to yourself, which has been really difficult for me since I deleted this video initially, and be kind to others. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Victoria. And I look forward to seeing your versions of this tag. Take care. Bye.